My role changes, I think, every quarter, probably. You just get your head around something and then all of a sudden I'm glad I'm comfortable leading, a team of 50 because now it's 80 and all those things I worked out of, you kind of pass down to your managers and then you have to take on the next phase. I reckon there's this pressure, I don't know if every leader feels this, but I probably did for a while, where you feel like as the company grows and as you hire more impressive people, you have to change in a way where it's like you're more formal or you're more professional or you try and like look at other leaders and copy their style. And I think it never works, right? Like you just have to lean into what you're good at. You have to be authentic.
Welcome back to Wild Hearts. I'm your host, Mason Yates, on the investment team at Blackbird Ventures. This is the second time Craig Piggott, the founder and CEO of Halter, has joined us on Wild Hearts. Halter runs more productive and sustainable farms using a collar and an app. And back in 2020, here is one Samantha Wong, general partner at Blackbird, wrote in our first internal investment memo. Halter has the potential to transform the industry. 20 years from now, it may be as unthinkable to run a farm without Halter as it is to run a farm without tractors, quad bikes, or electric fences. Halter's customers back up that potential. They talk about how they would retire from farming without Halter, how they've been able to move to the other side of the world while still running their New Zealand farm. This really is a product with life-changing impact that also makes farmers more money. Over the past 4 years, Halter has experienced growth that places it in rarefied air. To achieve the extraordinary growth, Halter's sales team, production volume of collars, manufacturing capacity, shipping demands, deployment team, and customer support must all operate in harmony. It's a poetic business that needs to be special on every level, and it is. In this episode, we speak about the different levels of the business, the learnings along the way, and how the team achieves operational effectiveness on so many different dimensions required to succeed. If you enjoyed this episode and want to listen to the other gems we've got planned over the course of this season, we'd love it if you would subscribe to this podcast. It'll help others find Wild Hearts too. And with that, let's get into the episode. Let's set the scene. Can you just describe the value that Halter's product delivers to farmers?
Halter's product helps in a bunch of ways. The first, most obvious one is it cuts labor by probably about a third on some farms. So maybe it could be upwards of 30 hours a week, 30, 40 hours a week. So there's this like a big labor saving component. But then on the other side is like lifting production, growing more grass. And so if you're more precise around how you manage pasture, you can grow and harvest more grass. And it's the whole point of a pasture farm, right? And so with that, we see 10, 15, sometimes 20% lifts in production or lifts in productivity. And so that can be hundreds of thousands of dollars on these farms. So we're usually looking for like a 2 to 3 times. The goal is really a 3 times ROI for a farmer financially before you factor in all the intangible stuff like better peace of mind and sleep-ins and whatnot.
Just give us an insight into the in-app experience. How are farmers using Halter's app?
It's the number one app on their phones, that's for sure. They live in it. It's like how they run their farm. Halter is the operating system for their farm. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it's like the first app they open in the morning and the last one they close at night. You're usually scheduling cows to come to the shed at 4 a.m., which you do before you go to sleep. And then when you wake up, it's the first thing you check. Yeah, it's pretty core to the farm. It's always on that bottom nav bar, phone, messengers, Halter. That's for sure. And the actual design is, obviously we put a lot of effort into that. Farmers are terrified of that, right? Like, I'm not that, am I going to know how to use it? Like, don't worry. It's like very intuitive. So there's been a lot of effort in that.
I bet. And what is it? 2 hours farmers would spend on average in the app every day.
Yes. I think that is the average. It's an interesting metric because we do a lot of stuff obviously to try and reduce that, but then we build a lot more product. So it goes up and down. It's been north of that. And you could make an argument for whether that's if that was 4 hours, is that a good thing or is that reflective of poor user experience? I'm not sure. So,
well, I mean, it's better than waking up at 4 a.m.
Yep.
And I get to chill out in France as a real example of an early customer.
Yep.
And like it speaks to Halter genuinely being the operating system for farmers.
It's right at the core, right? It's like the heart of a farm. It doesn't get more important than the pasture you have and the cows you have. And that's the other two things that's like Halter. So yeah, for sure. It is right at the core, which is why you get such strong like customer love, and you have people in tears like when they've used it for a few months and they realize what it can do. Or yeah, if you're ever having a bad day, you just get out on the road and meet some customers, and it's like, it does wonders. Really puts everything in perspective.
We had you on the pod a few years ago, far out, maybe 2021.
I was looking back, I think it was 2020, into 2020.
That's right. The in-app product experience has changed so much, and I just love for people to also get a sense of, from a farmer experience, what sort of insights are they getting when they log in? What actions are they taking?
The core of Halter is like what we call the live tab. Imagine it's like the bird's eye view of your farm. So that has live cow locations. If you were to look out the window of your house, cows are in the app where they are in real life. And it also gives you live pasture information. So even down to like the way that the app is rendered, like a paddock is greener if it's got more grass in it, and it's browner if it's got less grass in it. And so it's truly a bird's eye view. And if you click on a paddock or you zoom in more, you get more information. You get data on its growth rate for that paddock, its leaf stage, when you last grazed it. So there's a super intuitive kind of map-based core to Halter. And a lot of things on farm, when you're trying to like save time, are live. Like you are shifting cows now, or putting up a fence now, or reviewing a sick cow now. It's all based around this live tab. And then you obviously can go back into history to review stuff, or you can schedule stuff forward or run scenarios forward. So you might be trying to work out like, should I feed more to my cows or feed less to my cows, or like all these decisions to try and optimize your season. That's probably at the heart. There's a whole center for the animal all around their health, reproduction, when they're calved, their timeline, what mobs have been a part of. So there's kind of the animal side. And yeah, there's an app, there's a desktop, bunch of different views now, but that's like the core. The pasture side of things is like very much the stuff that's the newest. We've done a lot of work on that recently. Some of it very desperately, and some of it like just looking forward, trying to build where we think what farmers want. So
what do you mean desperately?
2023, we had like a major shift in the market for our customers where payout went down, interest rates went up, farmers went from valuing their time and, their lifestyle as something to nothing. Like they were like, hey, we're happy to work a 100-hour week and the marginal cost of an hour is zero for us. And so we don't care about any of that stuff. All we care about is cold, hard return on investment. Farming's kind of cyclical. So that's like, it's not the first time I've seen that. And we probably had more like time saving and peace of mind value than we realized. So that was doing like the lion's share of kind of the selling, I guess. Not that customers told us that, but when that market shifted, we like responded as quickly as we could to change our product direction or product roadmap towards that. So like anything that would produce just like an ROI on a spreadsheet, you can calculate it, you can measure it. That became the priority. And so that was this product we called Pasture Pro. It was like a 3-month push, every night, every weekend. I moved into the office. It was full on. And it was loads of fun and a great success. Like at the end of that 3 months, we ran like a Pasture Pro webinar and had 70% of our customer base like turn up to it. And I think within 3 weeks, 80% of our customers were using this product every day. So it was like a phenomenal result, but yeah, definitely a pretty critical moment.
Without a doubt. Let's zoom in a bit more there. I remember chatting to you a while ago and you were speaking about the fun and the intensity of the leadership meetings that were happening every single morning. Mm-hmm. And I would love for you to just take us back to a really hectic week and let's walk through it because it's fascinating.
Yeah, okay. I can take this a few ways. So these like the general operational horsepower within Halter, I guess, that comes from being like a hardware company with production in China, with supply chain issues, not anymore, but in the past, logistics, like there's that whole piece, like running the engine And that's where you get the breadth and the challenges, and everything has to go right. You've got to tie together like your marketing, your sales, the leading indicators on that with how you forecast units. If you slightly get the forecasting wrong, you've got like millions of dollars of inventory just like sitting in a warehouse. And through to how do you actually ship that stuff out to your customers, onboard those customers, get the collars on cows, get towels up. How do you make sure, you're not just dropping stuff at their doorstep and wishing them good luck, like they're successful with their onboarding so they don't churn. Through the first, like say 3 months, there's a lot there. And that's before you even get to like the product, like the product teams owning their sections and training the cows. And it can be winter and, we're running daily meetings on like the power levels of every single device in the fleet, hundreds of thousands of devices across the country, and manually, it's mostly automated now, but like going in and manually like shutting down subsystems of collars to try and conserve power. And kind of feels like you've got a rover on Mars sometimes. Like you just can't like, you can't go out there and manually touch or work with these devices. So once they're out in the wild, in the field, you have to do it all remotely. Anyway, for Pasture Pro, it's probably a little bit different because that's like a dedicated, this is where you really have to rely on like a great leadership team, great heads of divisions to all be working in unison, because I'm off going super deep on one fire in particular. And this could be, I try and follow critical path around the thing that's like the rate limiting step for the company. And in this moment, it was Pasture Pro. And so very much was this probably cycle between trying to align on the product we're building, trying to make sure every day everyone's working on the most important thing, trying to get into the field, talk to customers, test it, work with our beta group. A lot of it's just a big engineering challenge as well. If you've got a team working, 10 p.m. or midnight every night, there's a lot of it which is just leadership and reminding people of the why and helping them to be excited about it. Yeah, that's a slightly different, like hectic period than just the usual scaling, where as a leadership team we meet every morning and you're going through the most important details for the day. And
there was a period where you had an insane pipeline and all of these contracts sold, and these collars weren't in the hands of these farmers yet. Can you walk us through what went well about step one in actually closing those contracts?
To go from a farmer that hasn't heard of Halter to a contract signed?
Yes.
Well, this has evolved over time. Like today, probably every farmer in New Zealand has heard of Halter. So the marketing funnel's a bit different. But if you went from a farmer that hadn't heard of Halter, obviously step one is awareness. And so that's going to be either digital or some brand advertising or a referral from a customer that's like loving Halter and telling everybody that they can.
Let's talk about it in the context, because I know that you're launching in the US.
Yep.
Maybe anchor around how you've gone about executing.
Yeah. So in the US, we typically start with digital marketing, right? Something online, because you can iterate extremely fast. It's easy to measure. And we're not trying to close deals online. We're just trying to generate leads and opportunities and get awareness out there. So we'd either be driving towards like a webinar, driving towards an event, or just collecting details and starting to nurture ranches in a marketing flow. So that's a relatively traditional, I think, marketing approach. Big element of digital. We try and do events when we're there. Really what you need is you need a first cohort of customers. That's the like most important part of, I think, marketing, especially into a new market, is like, okay, who are those first 5 or 10 customers that are going to love the product, tell everyone they know about the product, be great reference customers, because sales becomes a whole lot easier when you can actually point to examples and be like, hey, just talk to this farmer or this rancher. Yeah, we kind of think about these two things together when we're starting a new market. All right, how do we just get some awareness, drive awareness through a market, and how do you get those first handful of customers to love the product? Like 100% NPS, 10 out of 10, it's the best thing they've ever done. Those are like the critical starting points before you get to sales.
What would be a mistake that you've made in the last 12 months about the marketing funnel? What have you done to iterate on it?
I still don't think we're that good at marketing. I think our biggest mistake with marketing is we do iterate just too slow. I think marketing is a lot more objective than most marketers like to let you believe. Like, I think a lot of people try and, hey, this is like good marketing, and it's the subjective measure, and it's based on what it looks like and all this type of stuff. And I think the more we learn about marketing, the more you realize it's quite formulaic. It's very data driven. It's all about like content velocity, working out what's winning, doubling down on your winners. Like there's a power law to marketing. I think we're working that out. Anyhow, I think compared to some other companies, like we've still got a long way to go on marketing, but thankfully our product is just so good that we kind of get away with being bad at marketing. But obviously when we get that right, that'll be a compounding impact.
Okay, so you've got an early cohort in the US.
Yep.
You actually do.
Yep.
And you were just saying how well it was going.
Yep.
How does a unit go from the minds of people and engineers at Halter into their hands of someone in the USA? Walk us through that journey.
Yeah, well, if you want to start right at the top, you start with like your electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, and firmware engineers designing the hardware. Would have built over like 100 different versions of the hardware into 4 families. But so you're qualifying a design. You're obviously got to make that last 5-6 years in the field. It's got to be cheap. It's got to be small. There's a whole lot of requirements to that. It has to work in negative 40 degrees up to 60 degrees. Cows, sometimes swim in rivers and stuff. Like it has to be, it's like a bomb-proof product, right? And so it starts there. Once you're qualified, so you're happy with that, you then turn that into a bill of materials. You work out your supply chain. Our device maybe has about 300 to 400 different items in it. You need to set up quality control on your supply chain. So you want to make sure every piece of incoming, like all your incoming goods are at the quality they were when you first tested them. So that's into the factory. You have different factories for us that are around China or a few different countries now, but into like your final assembly factory, you make the unit. This is also a forecast, right? So you've got to forecast that supply chain ordering. So some components will take months to make. So you're trying to forecast ahead. All right, we need 50,000 of these in the next 3 months. And then, these it flows out the end of the factory. Now you need to take every batch and test them again. So you do like an accelerated life test on a batch level in case you've got a regression in quality. And then they go on a boat. It takes 6 weeks to get to New Zealand. So there's a lot of like inertia in the system. They get like calibrated and set up and stuff and all that in China. And then they land here, say if it's a New Zealand farm, they come into a warehouse, which ideally they spend less than a few weeks in. They get repackaged into, this customer has 1,200 cows, 1,200 collars going on a pallet, and then they get shipped out. They get provisioned to that farm. If this is a new farm, there's a whole separate track where we've had to map the farm, build the digital twin of it, obviously onboard all the users, and like kind of set up the system so that when the towers get shipped out, the farmer puts the towers up. We do a go live process with the towers. Collars arrive, farmer puts the collars on, and then, all systems green, you start training. That whole process used to take maybe like from a farmer signing to being ready to train used to take maybe 3 months. It's now, I think the quickest we've done is like 2 weeks. So it's getting a lot quicker. But a lot of moving parts.
Yeah. What would be some wisdom that you'd impart on your younger self on lessons in supply chains?
You become operationally excellent by doing it. Like I'd say Halter is now like operationally excellent, but it's been a long road and it's been a hard road, and it's been through getting it wrong a lot and getting it right sometimes and learning from when you get it wrong. But you just have to do it. Most of those lessons that we've learned wouldn't be on like the top 10 list of, if you were to write them down, like, and try and think about what they would be and move slowly, like would be wrong. So you just have to do it. And then I think being like psychotically aware of every little, if anything smells bad, like just diving straight into it, because small problems become major problems very quickly when you're making thousands or tens of thousands of units a week. Like one small thing can change. And we've had this, more than once, and you just build millions of dollars of units that have like an issue or a flaw. And that's a big, you're doing recalls and having to now do reverse logistics and get everything back into like send it back to China and replace units. And that's when you've got war rooms at midnight and 10 people around the table running solver on a spreadsheet, trying to work out, the most optimal way to do something. So that's when you become very, very good at operations.
Can you give us an example of like, I guess I want to build an empathy for how you've developed that nose to sniff out where I guess your intuition is saying, Mayday, Mayday, check this out. But that has to be refined over time. And I'd just love to hear an example of that.
Yeah, it probably starts right at the top with like a culture where people are rewarded for actually calling that stuff out and not just, trying to stamp it into the corner. It's tempting if people come to you with bad news to like jump on that. And I think it's firstly remembering like, hey, thank you for sharing. I'm glad I know. And then from that point, like get alongside them and help solve it. So I think that's broadly speaking across every team, but definitely true in operations. I think having good data across all the key parts of the system is important. And then, I think there's a lot of intuition, right? There's a lot of like pattern matching. You know what good looks like when it's running well. And then you kind of know when things start to sound different or look different or units come through differently. Or you might have one customer that when they put on the 1,200 collars, they had 12 that were faulty out of the box. You're like, okay, it's 12 collars. Instantly, you should be like, well, shit, that's 1% of production. When did that happen? Let's go back a farm. Like, have we talked to that farmer? Did they have any? You start like, you just chase this. You pull the bit of string and you just chase. And you'll find maybe 20 customers earlier, someone else said the same thing. And next thing you realize in the last 40,000 you built, they had a 1% failure rate on arrival, which maybe is okay, but why? What's causing that? And is that thing that's causing that going to become a 10% failure rate in 6 months? So you can kind of see how you see a little string, you got to start pulling it. Yeah.
Do you have tactical advice that you could share around setting up your supply chain in an effective way? Like, for example, you mentioned you've got a few different manufacturers. I'm curious why you have a few and what the dynamics are there.
Number one rule is like, there's no replacement ever for just being there yourself and caring a lot about every part of it. So what I mean by that is like, if you're worried about a supplier, you hop on a plane and you go visit that factory yourself. You see those parts yourself. You watch the tests yourself. Even the fact that you've turned up shows them that you care and it's important to you. So then they'll care more. It's like a big part of the culture when you're manufacturing. So, and that can be at suppliers, that can be at your main factory the whole way through. When there's shortages, you always have an option. It's tempting to say like, oh, well, we usually get this part from ST Electronics and they said it's going to take 52 weeks to increase the order quantity and sit on your hands. Like that's your only option. But when your whole business is, you just can't grow the business if you don't have hardware, you find ways. And that can be, at one point there was a company down the road that we knew made hardware that had the same chip and we're on the phone to them being like, how many do you have? Can we buy some from you? We'll pay double. Like it's an extra few dollars a unit, but it unlocks the supply chain. Or we've got the most senior people we can find from ST in the office and we're showing them charts of like Halter's growth and how many cows we could be on and how big the TAM is. And, we're not just a customer that's trying to order 10,000 of these. Like we might be ordering 1 million of these in 2 years. So you're like, there's so many options. And then guess what? Like they'll find the chips for you. There's always a way to find what you need to make it happen if you care. And if you get into the weeds, we did a lot of redesigning. This was during like the 2021 supply chain crisis where parts that were usually 8 weeks were over a year. We would have 3 different versions of the hardware on the go, qualified with different components in them. So when one went short, we could swap to like a B version or a C version and scale that. And ultimately that was probably a mistake, to be honest, because I think they caught up with us and it was hard to qualify to the same quality because you're probably qualifying 3 versions to a third of the quality, and we ended up with a lot of issues. But there's always a way if you care and if you're there.
If you care, can you talk about the operating rhythm for the leadership team?
Yeah, well, at the top, the exec team, we meet every day. So we start every day with like a stand-up, like any other team would. If you're a product team, you would do daily stand-ups. The exec team is a first team. If you're the VP of product, your team is the exec team, not the product teams, because you need that, like obviously that alignment at the top. If we're not operating like a team or a first team, then we've got a whole department like off on a different cadence. We're doing a different thing to what we're trying to sell, and it's the ultimate like form of misalignment. So that's not a unique concept to Halter. Lots of stuff out there on first teams, but so that's where it starts. We run like an weekly exec meeting. Yeah, we can go real deep on all the.
Please.
Okay. We run monthly like AMAs with the full team. We run quarterly offsites. We run quarterly live 360s. This is as an exec team. This all evolves obviously with stage and size and all these types of things. We start every exec meeting with gratitude. I think when you're constantly fighting fires and scaling and whatnot, it's like really helps like galvanize a team, telling someone in the room what you're grateful for, like, well, who you're grateful for in the room.
Damn, what does that look like?
This is actually, I stole this from, I think Marissa Mayer used to do it with her exec team. The start of the exec meeting, it's like a 3-hour meeting or whatever, and we spend 10 minutes.
Sorry, every day?
No, sorry. This is weekly.
Gotcha.
We do it on a Tuesday. So once a week, we'll start with a round of gratitude and a score out of 5. So I might say, what would be an example? I recently passed product to our like VP of engineering. And so I've been working with him a lot. And so I might be like, hey, my gratitude this week's to Andy. Just been like so impressed at the empathy you've built for farmers and whatever time, or how you handled a situation or whatever it is. So everyone kind of shares gratitude to someone else in the room. This is going to sound so cheesy, like to an external, and then a score out of 5 is like how I'm doing. So, hey, I'm a 4 out of 5 this week, or I'm a 2 out of 5 this week. So really good like sense check for, if anyone's a 1, that's a problem. Or if anyone's a 5, we want to know why. And kind of just helps bring us closer as a team. The exec team at Halter is one of the things I'm probably the most proud of. I think we're one of the highest performing teams at Halter. We have a lot of fun. We like obviously work through some very stressful situations, but like we function really well as a team. Yeah, it's definitely one thing I'd say I'm proud of, and I think it's critical to the success of Halter.
What other decisions are you happy that you made that make you proud about the performance of that team?
Hunger over experience. I think a lot of people at Halter are where they are because they were like extremely hungry and kind of like proved themselves over time and just grew. And every time often we go like try and hire an experience and that is not as good as you think they are. And yeah, some of those like early employees that have the scar tissue, have just been through the journey, are just irreplaceable. So I think that's a big part of it. I think joy is a big part of it. I think winning is good for culture, right? Like you have to win. I think winning makes up for a lot of other like gaps. You're willing to put in the effort, work the hours, make sacrifices if you're winning.
Can you bring us into the room of like what the agenda looks like on a daily stand-up?
Yep. So daily stand-up is going to be, if an offsite's like often high level, long-term strategic, a weekly exec meeting there's an element of planning to it. There's an element of like, again, reviewing metrics and like checking strategy. Daily stand-up's mostly about execution. So are there things that are blocking? What are like critical things happening that day that someone might need a hand on? Whether it's a big hire, whether it's launching a product, whether it's, a certain customer thing. So it's just this pattern we get into really to help with execution and help to keep us all aligned. So much stuff happens in a day. Like it sounds cumbersome. It's not. It's like, if you have a meeting or if you're busy, you don't have to turn up. Like it's not compulsory. Probably these 80% of us there most days. And it's also just a good like team ritual. If you're lucky, you might turn up on a Wednesday and everyone's like, nah, no fires on my side. Like things are going good. And you just spend 10 minutes talking about your dog. Like, so, but usually there's something grunty on the agenda. Actually, to be clear, there's no like written agenda. Obviously it's a stand up. You're talking it through, but.
Yeah. And I'm curious what you've learned as a CEO as you've evolved. In particular, if we laser in on you as a leader, I'd love to capture some lessons.
My role changes, I think, every quarter probably, or about that cadence. I think that's something actually I enjoy. I think I love the challenge. I love you just get your head around something and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, I'm glad I'm comfortable leading, a team of 50 because now it's 80 and all those things I worked out of you kind of pass down to your managers and then you have to take on the next phase. So I think it's always changing. I think probably the main lesson has been around probably authenticity. I reckon there's this pressure, or maybe I don't know if every leader feels this, but I probably did for a while, where you feel like as the company grows and as you hire more impressive people, you have to change in a way where it's like you're more formal or you're more professional or you try and like look at other leaders and copy their style. And I think it never works, right? Like you just have to lean into what you're good at. You have to be authentic. So I think that's probably been my biggest lesson.
There's a cringe moment of like being inauthentic come to mind?
Probably the best example would be you're feeling like you have to be like a cheerleader for the company, or you have to try and like motivate your team by telling them like all the epic things or all the wins. But obviously very quickly, if that's all you do, people just start to be like, oh yeah, here we go again. Here's a rah-rah speech. I don't think I gave too many of them, but I definitely would have shied away from being like brutally honest with the team at times as we scaled, and feeling like, oh man, they're already working really hard and they're super stressed, and what's the benefit of stressing them out more or whatever it is. But yeah, you just become the leader that walks around blowing smoke up people's asses, and that is, you just lose all the trust and all the credibility. And so I think it's Ben Horowitz who says like leaders should tell it how it is. Like you just have to become known as a person that just says it exactly how it is. There's no spin, there's no politics, it's just, this is good, this is bad. Even like simple things like, hey, you're doing a review, here's your strengths and here's your shadows. It's like, no, here's the good, here's the bad. Like why are we calling it shadows? Like you're bad at this, here it is. Like, I don't know, I think you want to earn this reputation of just, having credibility, having trust, being accurate with your assessments, being trusted to make the right calls, like all this type of stuff. So I think that's been a big one. We just hired a president.
A president?
Yeah.
Right in time for the election.
We call him POTUS. And he leads all our customer, like marketing, sales, support, success. And phenomenal guy, super impressive, like done everything from consulting in the US to CRO to like exec team of a publicly listed company to uranium mining in Africa. Like he's just done so much stuff, and he's so smart, and he is just so down to earth and authentic and has like childlike joy. He's walking around in shorts and Birks and basketball singlets, like it's refreshing. Like it's an amazing, I'd say that's like a cool role model, I think, of a leader who is still grounded, and people just revere him. And I remember when we hired him, like on LinkedIn, when someone's like, hey, I'm joining this company, and everyone's like, oh, congrats. Everyone was like, congrats, Halter. Like it was like, people just want to work with him. And I think he's a great leader.
In the prior episode, you mentioned how you would walk in a rocket lab and almost like immediately feel this sense of ambition.
Yeah.
And anything is possible.
Yeah.
And like, I know how sort of tactile and real that experience and formative that experience was for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the backdrop, I think about just the natural reality of launching a rocket into space and how it's so deadline dependent.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious how, like, when I walked into the Halter office, I was blown away.
Mm-hmm.
And like, there was a similar feeling of just excitement.
Mm.
When you're telling everything as it is, has that been an inattention of yours on like, how do you think about fulfilling that dream of coming into the office and then tying that to being your authentic self and just ensuring that magic is there when you walk into the Halter office? Has that been something that you think about?
Those things aren't in tension, they complement each other. So if we were just all hands, we're the best company ever, like you guys are all great. After a while, you just don't believe it, right? It just becomes fake. And so I think you have to experience like the full range of emotions. Like that's the fun, that's the energy, that is the ride. Like someone was recalling a story about their first day back, and they're like, yeah, that was this meeting, and we realized we had to do X, and like that was the first day back, and I just cried for an hour. Like you're like, whoa, that's heavy. And you realize like people just care so much, they're so passionate, like they've put, for a lot of people, it's like their life's work. And of course that's how it's going to feel. Like think of an athlete training for the Olympics. Like it's not every day is not just going to be winning isn't comfortable. Like it's not going to just be, fun and rainbows and just like, yeah, it's great. And so I think the full range of emotions is really important. It makes it, when you do win, electric and really feel like you've earned it and like it as an achievement. So I have this theory where progress at a company level is defined mostly by our pain threshold. So we will do as much stuff as we can kind of like we feel comfortable doing or how uncomfortable we're willing to be. So let's take the US. If the US is flying, working super well, hiring's fine, customers are happy, well, guess what? We'll go to Brazil. Like you just open up the next market. And if things are on fire and you're trying to put out fires, you don't open up a new front. You're still trying to work on the fires you've got in front of you. And so how uncomfortable you're willing to be really defines your progress as a company, I think. And what happens is like a lot of your best performers thrive solving hard problems and being ambitious. And once you put out those fires and you automate things and they work really well, people just go looking for the next. They're like, well, where's my purpose gone? Like, I don't come in to work every day just to drink cups of coffee with happy farmers. Oh man, good to know everything's going well. Like you're always trying to push for more. And so, yeah, I think that's like a big part of making it feel electric is people join and they're nervous, they're looking at a deadline and it's scary and they're like, there's no way we can do that. And then they achieve more than they ever thought they could achieve. That's really cool for a team and for individuals and for growth, for my own growth, for the team's growth. Yeah, I think that's that feeling of electric. Like, yes, a mission that is important to the world is like a really key part of that. But there's a lot of people that don't come to Halter because they're excited. They love cows. Like some people come to Halter and they've never seen a cow in their life. Like they come because they can do their best work and it's a culture of high performance and winning and then probably they'll build empathy for the mission over time. Usually is what happens.
How do you ensure you grow at the same rate of the company?
Yeah.
With the heavy side.
That is a big question. I guess the first step is acknowledging you have to do that. Being stuck in your ways and pretending that's not true is probably where it firstly would go wrong. I think being open-minded, being really curious, putting in a lot of effort to read and learn and like observe from other people, admit your mistakes, all these things feed in. I think the reason I start with open-minded is like, I think most companies and most people go wrong when they spend years working on something which like obviously isn't working or like chasing a strategy which it's too hard to put your hand up and say like, oh, actually I got this wrong. And because if you could just do that really well, if you could just assess if what I'm doing is working or not working, you could be flipping a coin for strategy. And if every time it was wrong, you were like, okay, well that's wrong. Let's do flip a coin again. You'll do pretty well. Like just if you were honest with yourself about if a strategic decision or a call was the right one or the wrong one, then you'll get there in the end. But that's where I think step one, where it goes wrong. And then, just working on yourself like you work on your product or your culture or whatever it is. This can be 360s. This can be books. This can be looking at other leaders. Yeah.
Do you have mentors?
Yep. I've had mentors. I've had exec coaches. Peter Beck, obviously. Yeah, exec team. I think you can learn something from everybody.
What is the most reliable way to get a real view of whether you are growing at the same rate of the company? And what is the way that you lean on the most to ensure that you're growing at the rate of the company?
Okay, for the first part of that, so how do I know if I'm growing fast enough? I think you pretty quickly work out if you're the bottleneck. You can feel if you're the bottleneck. So imagine like the way you hire people when you're 5 people is like the founder hires everybody, and then you get to a point where you're trying to double the team in 3 months. Well, that's probably don't do that. That'd be a mistake. We've done that before, but you're trying to hire faster, and you just don't have time to do. People are finding great candidates, and they can't get time in your calendar, and like it's very clear. Like, okay, hold on, I need to work out a better way. Who else do I trust? Who can hire? Who can headhunt? Who can? So there's like all these tangible examples of where you just don't have the time. So I think it's probably one. I think and this is a good thing, you get good at seeing when people, like you dive into an area. This could be hardware was probably where it happened the most clearly for me because I'm a mechanical engineer. I understand hardware. I was very involved with it in the beginning. And then they got to this point where every time there was like a fire or a wobble, and I'd be like, oh, sweet, critical path. I'll like double click, dive in. I'm like, no. You guys are great. Like, I wouldn't do anything different. Like, and in actual fact, I'm kind of impressed. And you realize, like, cool. Now our hardware leader he is better at leading this team and prioritizing and executing in this area than I am. And I'm not going to get out of his way. I think that's a mistake. Like this concept, you can like hire great people and just get out of their way. I think you're constantly like holding it in standards and like, you know, kind of forging the expectations and ensuring that they perform. But they are the ones like running that thing. So I think anyhow, you kind of take hats off and give it to people, and that's a good thing. And you work out when you're the bottleneck, and you have to somehow scale that. So that's probably on the first half. Now for myself, how do I grow? This would be different for everyone. For me, my like default way is just to work harder. And so I'll just put in more hours on something. So if this was, you know, raising money or hiring executives or strategy or whatever it is, like you just go do the thing. Yeah, I don't think there's any replacement for just time. You obviously care because you're the founder. So, but yeah, for me, it's just roll the sleeves up and do more hours. And that's a little concerning, like, because at some point you just run out of hours, right? And yeah, the lever you pull on the most is like already at max, and you have to work out other ways to try and be like smarter and stuff. But you just hope that you can grow. If you're working your ass off, you can just grow fast enough to keep up. It's a bit abstract, but that's like the general rule across most things for me.
How much time do you spend just planning? Like if we look at your week, I look at your calendar and it's like, hey, what's on this week? Because of all the things that need to go right, I'm just curious how much time you dedicate to planning.
Okay, I think I need to take a step back here. So Ravi Gupta, who I think was like COO at Instacart and he's a partner at Sequoia, has this concept called like desperation-induced focus. And this whole cycle of quarterly planning and strategic priorities and key results and all of this stuff is like, works okay at a steady state. But when things are changing so fast, like it makes no sense. And this is the thing I wrestle with, like, hey, we're going to focus on this quarter. It's like, well, why this quarter? What if we finish it at week 10? What if it should take a bit longer? What if we get 3 weeks in and then we learn something and it completely changes our thesis, and the 6 things that were top of the list now are like completely worth nothing and you should pivot? And so many companies get locked into this feeling of like, oh, well, we don't want to cause chaos. Like people already started on these projects. You know, it's going to be sad if we tell them that it's worth nothing and they should still launch it. And it's just totally an inefficient way of operating. It's like skiing pizza down a mountain. Like, yep, you're not going to hurt yourself, but there's definitely faster ways down the mountain. And so for us, I think this is part of like the daily stand-ups and this kind of the clock speed of the company. You want to be very fast. And if we learn something one night, we'll call an all hands the next morning and be like, all right, like this is what we learned. This happened. It means this thesis we had was completely wrong or has changed in these ways. And this is the impact it's going to have on these teams. For these teams over here, nothing changes. Keep doing your thing. It's just good context. For you guys, we don't know yet. Like, let's get in a room and work it out. And so the priorities become clear if you are ambitious and there's enough desperation in the room. Take the US, right? Like we plan hiring and salespeople and all this type of stuff, but also if you hire 5 salespeople and they're ramping slower than you think, well, it's like, shit, okay, second priority is hiring, and the current priority is like, why are they ramping slower? Do we know the playbook? Do we have product market fit? So I think this concept of these long planning and doing all these cycles has its place in some places, but like they're typically overused. I think to try and achieve this feeling of comfort and things not being chaotic. So when this total tangent, when people say, oh, you know, you've got to give teams like 18 months to form so they know how to work together. I'm like, what? That's totally like the desk plan at Halter shifts like every 3 months at times. Like, and yeah, the first time you do it, everyone's like, oh, I liked my desk. And then the 6th time you do it, no one cares. Everyone's just like, yep, like we're working with them right now. Yep, that makes sense. I should sit with them. Like, yeah.
How else do you drive decisiveness in the company?
Ownership, like extreme ownership. I would prefer you make a call and you get it wrong than not make a call. So yeah, I guess a feeling that like you're going to make some mistakes. That's fine. Context, making sure every person, you push context down as far as you can throughout the company. Obviously hiring well. Yeah, I think a lot of things that come back to ownership. Fix a lot of problems with just very clear, explicit ownership.
What are the pros and cons of building a company from New Zealand?
Pros, like you get good. I think the talent here is good. Like schools are good. I think we're we're not competing against, there's not that many startups here, or at least like growth stage startups, hardware startups chasing hard problems. So I think you get the lion's share of good talent. I think there is actually like one of the really cool things about New Zealand is the low ego, like humbleness. I think that enables you to admit when you're wrong and be a beginner and learn. Like I love that. I love it when people would they win and they get shit done and they are happy to not be telling everybody about it. And then cons, senior talent, like it's very hard to go hire a CMO that has scaled 3 startups and just comes in and knows exactly what to do. Because we just don't have the depth of talent there. So you have to pretty much like train it yourself. Yeah, or try take it out of a big corporate and like be like, hey, you've got to unlearn half of the stuff and you're trying to remember this other half, and that's really, really hard. People do it, but I think we've failed at it more than we've succeeded at it. Yeah. It's cheap. Salaries here are half of what they are in the US or less. I think the biggest one for me would be the humbleness probably. Some people aren't, they need to be more like ambitious. It's probably one of the downsides as well. The amount of times I see people achieve way more than they ever thought was possible. It's quite cool. Obviously, you feel like very proud of your culture for that, but you also want people to believe in a way. And you see this in startups, right? And you see this in a lot of, I think, Kiwi companies. They get to some form of success and they get comfortable, and it's not that much harder to build a big company. So you should just go for it.
One of the things that I've been always blown away by is how you balance decisiveness and empathy. One of the best examples that comes to mind, pretty early days of Halter, you had come to the realization that you needed to charge more for Halter's product.
Yep.
Can you share whether that was a hard thing to do because you had so much empathy for farmers, whether you were going against why you started this and what the journey was like of just increasing prices, and you'll install your own cell towers, et cetera, et cetera?
Yes. This is probably a tension every company has between, like, if you're customer obsessed, how much do you do what's best for Halter versus like doing what's best for your customers? I think on the surface, they can feel that tension at times. I think in the long term, they're not. Like for us, the call to lift prices, this was in the early days, just had to happen because we were losing money on every deal, right? And so like I think you very quickly like, hold on, well, if we want to be around, if we want to run a viable business, then we just need to do that. And the challenge actually becomes like, okay, well, if we have to do that, how do we make sure we're providing more value? Yeah, and we kind of, I guess, knew like, well, if we can make this flywheel work, then the team will grow, we'll hire more people, we have a healthier business, we can afford to invest in riskier bets, that'll mean a better product. And so you kind of just go through this loop. So I think actually when you go through the layers, like they're more aligned than you think. You can probably apply that to a lot of things, customers, employees, whatever it is. And then same with, like we used to put on every collar in the beginning and we would probably talk to our customers every week and you start to realize like, well, if we can make the towers so easy to put up that a farmer can put them up in 20 minutes and doesn't take us 2 days, then that's going to be cheaper for the customers, obviously. It doesn't have to be a bad experience. Shit, most of the farmers that put our towers up feel proud. They're like, it's like big kids Lego. They take photos with them and stuff. And so, yeah, I think it's like a delightful experience in a way. It's still a job to do. But yeah, so I think some of these things just aren't the trade-offs that they seem to be on the surface in the long term. Definitely in the short term, like if we were to lift prices today, typically been reducing prices at the moment, but if we were to lift prices, yeah, people wouldn't be happy. And it might take a while for that to show up in terms of more product or more value or, healthier Halter, so better product, better farmers. Same with what I say to, a lot of people at Halter work very hard. Everyone's on a salary. There's this like false, we don't have this, but like this false thing where it's like, well, I worked extra hours and didn't get paid for it. It's like, well, no, you get paid for it. It's just that you don't get paid like that day for it, right? Like when we next come around to do REM reviews, if you've been performing better, guess who's getting the bigger pay rise? Like it's you. And so it gets captured. It's just on a different time horizon, right? So again, over the long term, I think these things are more aligned than in the short term.
You're a pretty good fundraiser.
Thank you.
Which is probably an understatement. Can you tell us what makes a successful fundraise?
Yep.
Let's go tactical.
Yep.
Storytelling, how you segment in waves, how much time you spend, many outside investors. Let's go deep.
All right. Depending what stage you are, this changes a little bit. But yeah, I think fundraising boils down to you are trying to convince another human that by them investing in you or your business, it's going to be good for them. And so in the pure version of that could be it's going to provide returns to your LPs. The cynical version of that is it's going to help a junior partner get promoted, or a principal get promoted or what. So you've really got to understand, like, I think the motives of the person you're dealing with and even like their boss or beyond that. And that changes per stage. It depends who you're talking to, the types of investors, but you've got to start there. You then, if it's just a human on the other side of the table, how do you best describe, say, like your business and farming or the story of Halter to them? Obviously, part of that it's a pitch deck. Part of that is like things you say, the materials you share, the process you go through. And then this whole cycle, you just need to iterate way more than you think you need to iterate. And the number one mistake I think I see from early founders is they go pitch an investor and the investor says to them, hey, you're just a bit early. We just need, when you need $1 million of ARR. And the founder goes, okay, damn, I'm just a bit early. Like, and they go home and they work on adding more revenue. But like, you always want more revenue, right? So and guess what? You probably go back at $1 million of ARR and they're like, oh, we really need 2. Often that's just an excuse it's like a false objection. Like they just didn't like your business enough. They weren't convinced enough of like the product or the TAM or the opportunity or the progress. And so the iteration's critical to like, okay, all right, well, they thought we were too early. We didn't have enough revenue. How else can we solve that problem? Can we talk to them about pipeline? Can we show like LOIs? What about like sales, or can we put them on the phone with someone who's about to buy? Like how else can we, for a while at Halter, we had we couldn't produce enough hardware to grow revenue fast enough. And so the way we helped, investors get comfortable is we hired a sales team and just told them if I can sell regardless, like just sell. And a signed contract, although it's not revenue, like then we just have to explain, okay, we've actually de-risked that. They're right there. We've just got to build the hardware and here's where we're at. And hey, we've built 1,000 of them. We're scaling. So you just got to iterate a lot. And when you're done, like as you go through this process, you might get to the end and have like 20 different pitch decks and, you've tried to describe things in all these different ways. And that's where I think that's the number one, mistake I see where people just don't iterate like they would a product or like they would, anything you try to like get good at. It's a constant cycle of you go home at night, you pitch 3 people or whatever it is, and they all said you don't have enough TAM. And it's like, okay, well, like, why is that? Like, maybe it's true, maybe it's not. Maybe it's like, that's not like, the TAM's huge. What am I doing that's making them think that? And you can work out your slides and you can try different things and change slides and answer questions in different ways. And next thing, that problem goes away. You never hear about TAM again. And you move on to the next one. Yeah. And so this is where the waves come into it. Typically you have, well, not typically, I guess, but for me, we would have a wave 0, wave 1, wave 2, wave 3. Your waves are sized based on just how much you can handle, how many live conversations you can have running. Wave 0 are not don't put your dream investors in like the first wave. You'll be terrible at pitching. You're going to be fumbling questions. People will ask you stuff that maybe they're really good questions and you need to get better at answering it. But often you get asked questions that are like you've never heard before. It's probably not it's a random question and you just don't even know how to answer it. And it's got nothing to do with your business. You just don't know how to answer the question. And so getting through the waves is like the way that that's why the wave zero exists. By the time you get to the investors you really care about, you shouldn't be hearing new questions, and you're a pro. Like you know your pitch inside out. You can tell it back to front, forwards. They ask you a question about margin, you jump forward to slide 7 and you're going, straight into that. You're not like, oh, I'll get to that. That's no one wants to, like, you need to be able to jump around back and forward and all this type of stuff. And so, yeah, that's probably that's why the waves exist. Well, that's why I run them like that. Maybe it's 20 people per wave. Yep. Then once you get a term sheet, the whole game changes. That's like the climax, right, of a fundraising process. Like you get one term sheet and the rest should flow. And yeah, you throw your waves out, you load in all the investors that you really want and try and make it competitive and run it from there. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. What would happen if in wave 1 you get a term sheet?
Yep.
You don't really like them.
Yep.
There wasn't much of a vibe. And you actually wanted people in wave 3.
Yep.
How do you manage those expectations?
Yeah, so you probably wouldn't put your favorite investors in wave 3. Like these are maybe a bell curve, right? To avoid this happening, like you need to get this balance between like you're good enough at pitching, you've heard all the questions, so you hit your sweet spot, and then like you've got this long tail of people you would take money from, but they're not like top of the list, and you'll get to them if your favorite ones pass on you for whatever reason. But if it was to happen, yeah, sometimes it's an impossible problem, like the timing just doesn't work and you have to make a call to walk away from a term sheet or, risk like really burning a relationship because you draw it out and you fuck them around. And so, but what you try to do is you try and stall the term sheet as long as you can. Your lawyer's on holiday and you can't believe that they're taking so long to get back to you or whatever the lawyers do. And then you are like fast tracking every other process that you can. It's probably more doable in like a series A process than say like a series, like as you get later stage, things just take longer. You can't go from start to finish in 2 weeks. Yeah, it gets a bit trickier. But also the fundraising process, I think at this stage for us is very different. Like it's very metrics based. Yeah, like you either have the numbers or you don't sometimes. There's a little bit of storytelling, but when you're a seed company, it's only storytelling. Like it's all you've got. And so, yeah, it can change. It's a bit different.
What's the biggest secret on storytelling that you anchor on when you are fundraising?
I think storytelling, I think it's Jobs who, either in his book or people that have written about him, talked about like when you see that pitch when he's on stage, and he's like, one more thing, it's a iPod, a phone, a internet connected device, whatever it is, can't remember, all rolled into one. Like, and it's that like famous pitch about him unveiling the iPhone. And you're like, wow, he's such a good storyteller. It's because he's told that story hundreds of times. He's told that to anyone internally that is willing to listen. He's like testing that at an all hands he's constantly telling the story and getting feedback on whether people understand it or are confused by it or makes them think of this other thing. And so I think the same thing for pitching is like, it shouldn't be the first time you're telling, if you're talking about customer love or if you're talking about how good your team is or whatever it is, like, let's take how good your team is. You're probably, when you're trying to convince someone to join you, telling the same stories. And so, it's probably the 30th time you've said it by the time you get to raising money and you're rolling it out. And so you're naturally just better at it. You're comfortable, how to tell it in a way that's interesting, where people get lost or, how to tell it more succinct. I'm not that succinct, but you get the idea. Yeah, maybe that's just saying practice. Yeah, I think if we go full circle, authenticity again, telling it how it is.
I was literally about to say that.
Yeah.
I was like, if I was to make one observation, it's the authenticity to your journey that is just so enthusiastic because you've lived it. And it gives you a unique advantage on how do we get to where we're imagining. And like when you can sort of feel the authenticity when it's real. Yeah. And then you can also feel it when it's not real.
Yeah, this is where, when you've got those friends who, maybe you got a friend who like pick a flaw, sucks at catching, or something. Like, I'm just making up something, right? And
oh, it's a deal breaker.
yeah, and they just don't care, right? Like, you know, you might have been playing a sport, whatever it is, and they're so comfortable in their own skin that confidence is kind of like attractive, or, you know, you don't cringe on behalf of them because they just don't care. They're just like, whatever. Like, man, I never like my parents never. You can tell I never caught a ball when I was a kid, or dumb analogy, but you get the idea. So yeah, I think honesty and authenticity is it's real. People want to hear real stories. Honesty for sure. Being able to talk about the bad things, or as much talk about the good things, I think attracts people to that scenario. We think about a lot about this with hiring. Us pretending that it's not hard to work at Halter doesn't serve us. Like, if we said on our job adverts, like, yeah, we work like 9 to 5, 6, you know, and kind of pretended like it wasn't a lot of work, you're going to get a lot of people that probably don't want to work hard, and you also fail to attract the people that really want to work hard. And so you're better off to just say, like, yeah, it's hard work. Like, it's fun. We achieve a lot. People grow. People do more than they ever thought they could have, but it's hard work. Like, it's intense. And there's a lot of people that want that, love that. Because of that, they're more likely to join Halter. And yeah, there's a bunch of people that, you know, think it's like you're crazy and they'll never work there, and that sounds like the worst workplace, and it's fine. You just get comfortable with that. But yeah, that's like this honesty, authenticity, similar bucket. So yeah, maybe that's probably a better answer than where I started.
I remember we finished the podcast last time. You said you would be international. Perhaps time for an updated prediction on where you'll be in 12 months' time.
Oh, 12 months. Yeah, we're definitely international.
Yep. Tick.
Okay. So we are an operating system for a dairy farm today, across every part of what they do. And I think the goal for us is to be the operating system for agriculture. Agriculture is the biggest job in the world in terms of, like, ag covers half the world's habitable land mass. And we've gone dairy beef, from dairy farming to beef farming, and we want to, like, continue to push that through just agriculture more broadly. And so this idea of being, like, the operating system for ag, I think is the goal for us. We'll keep scaling countries and, you know, the commercial side of the business, but this idea of, like, Planet OS is really the, like, long-term mission at the moment. And so, like, building towards that, it's going to sound a bit abstract at a high level, but you need to have, like, a integrated hardware software solution to collect the data, to then, like, build the digital twin, to then optimize an ag system, and ideally you're helping to execute as well. And so that, like, loop we're working on, or we're, like, thinking more and more about. And so yeah, I'd like to say in 12 months we've made some, like, good progress towards that. Maybe if it was 24 months, I'd say, like, you know, we've launched that product and we're well down that journey. But I think that's the goal for us. Like, it's such an important industry. It's massive. It's, like, you know, a core part of human life, right? Feeding the world, food production. And we can do it in a way where it's more productive and more sustainable. And so I think, like, we want to be that operating system for it. And so, yeah, I think that's now, like, what we're starting to turn our sights towards. Yeah, we should be on millions of cows and through hopefully more countries than New Zealand, Australia, and the US, but that'll just depend on how long it takes to really get the US running. But yeah, that would be, like, the next 12 to 24 months, I'd say.
I can't wait for a million cows. Thank you so much for your time. That was epic. Yeah, it's rare you leave just with so much energy after a long conversation like this one, and I'm just jacked. So thank you.
Cool. No, thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us on this latest episode of Wild Hearts. If you want to learn from other ambitious people that are building, designing, and creating the world that we want to live in, then please hit the follow or subscribe button. It would mean the world to us here on the Wild Hearts team. We have an insane producer, Melia Rayner, an incredible editor, Andy Jones from Welcome to Day One, and our marketing and content support is provided by Jonathan Bleakley, and we couldn't do it without them. If you're searching for investment, please, my DMs are open. Find me on LinkedIn. I'd love to help. And so with that, we'll see you next week, Wild Hearts.